Good afternoon. Welcome to this special edition of Breaking Through News. I'm here with Sergio Coppola. He's running for 6th District U.S. Congress. He's going to run as a Democrat to replace Bob Goodlatte, who's retiring. He's seeking the Democratic nomination. How are you doing today, sir?
Good.
Good, very well. So today we're going to sit here, we're going to talk with Sergio a little bit. I'm going to show him one of the packages I did a couple weeks ago on the Second Amendment. So first off, so tell us about your campaign. I understand that you're running as a moderate Democrat. Tell me what that means.
So how it works is that while I have a couple more right issues than what I do on the left, not more, but I have a few that are considered more right that I believe in. And so instead of making a campaign that just totally fits the left's agenda, what I've done is I put in what I believe and built my campaign around what I believe in and trying to fit that role to be genuine. You know, not because there's a lot of candidates out there that'll say whatever they need to on the day-to-day basis to please the room. And I don't want to be that kind of false candidate, and I try really hard to work with both sides and talk about what I believe in. So when I say I'm a moderate candidate, it's that I don't fit that left part of the scale. I don't fit the right part of the scale. I chose the Democratic ticket because I have more progressive beliefs, but I do have some of those appealing positions to the right side as well. And so when I say I'm the moderate, it's because if you were to put me on that sliding scale, I actually meet in the middle, or close to the middle, not completely in the middle because I picked the Democratic ticket, but I can be more appealing to Republican voters as well.
Okay, that's interesting because the 6th District is extremely conservative. I think we're the number is 2-1 as far as Republican voters to Democrat voters. So Bob Goodlatte's been in there for, 22 years, 23 years? So, I mean, I guess that's an appeal to make if you want to draw people from the other side in to vote for you. So is that one reason that you feel you'll be a better candidate if the Democrats choose you?
Absolutely. When I reach out, I have both Democratic and Republican supporters. And that makes a big issue. I'm not for blocking or ignoring one side to the other. I do listen to both sides and put what I believe in.
Okay, one of the things going on right now is all this talk about the big omnibus spending bill, $1.3 trillion, where they package everybody's interests together and just do a one vote. Do you think that our government is out of control with their spending? If so, why? And also, can you tell me how to fix it?
Well, there's different perspectives on the budget because I've spoken to a couple different economists, some doctorates even, and they say that it's all in perception on where our spending goes. There's no argument that we have government waste in our spending. But there are other perspectives that indicate that, well, we as congressmen develop the budget. We determine how much money goes out there. And that's a big statement to make, because if we determine where our spendings go and we determine how much money goes out there, there's many things that we don't have excuses on providing for. Having a better healthcare system, giving more funds to education, and working on the budgets that way. And so that's a big deal. Understanding the budget, finding out how much is our spending, how much do we have available to spend, and if we are putting out this money, determining. Some have indicated that if we had a balanced budget, there'd be no money in the economy. Like if it was zero, there'd be no money out there. And that's a pretty big statement, because that indicates that there is a different than the concept that's out there when it comes to our spending.
So immigration is a hot topic right now, brought to the forefront by Trump in his run up to the 2016 election. He made it a big part of his campaign. America under Bush administration, under Obama administration, they were still deporting people. It's not like it just stopped happening as Trump wants his followers to believe, in which they do believe. But what are your thoughts on DACA, how to fix DACA, TPS, and moving forward, providing security at the border?
Well, we've always needed better policies to do that. It's unfortunate that we are taking a harsher stance on families, and there's been a lot of articles that have came out, a lot of stories that have come out saying that
the perception that we needed to get rid of criminals was the indication that Trump has made, saying that we have a problem with criminal immigration. And then all of these stories are coming out saying, well, he's not attacking criminals. He's attacking people in their homes, people that have been contributing to our societies, people that have their own businesses, going after those people and breaking up families. And so our agreement is like, that's wrong. Like, that is not what he had promised, and that is not what he indicated, and yet that's what we are doing. And so we need better policies in place to protect those families. It is important to understand why we have immigration laws and make sure that we are processing correctly. That's one statement, but processing people that have been here for 20, 25 years and contributing to societies is not what should be our intentions. We should give them paths to security and possible citizenship, because they are citizens at that point. I would argue 25, 20 years. And then even the younger generation that have been here, that they don't know, the other country. They are, the only difference of American citizenship is a couple years.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, because I know I've met some of these people, and they haven't been to that country. They were there when they were little babies. And some of them don't even speak the language. Which, I mean, I couldn't imagine, being taken from here and sent somewhere where I've never been before, and I don't know the language. It's got to be a really scary situation for people in that situation. I know there's a blockade right now that's happening, but it could happen any day now. So, what would you? Okay, so back when they were supposedly negotiating DACA, and Donald Trump had said, let's not do 800,000. Let's do 1.6 million. I'll double the number of people that you want to stay if you guys fund my border wall. And there were some other things in there, but that was the two main points that they're trying to get out there. And that went in front of, Mitch McConnell called it to the floor for a debate. They introduced some other bills, but that bill right there, not the bill, but what Trump had proposed, got the least support. Do you think that a border wall should be funded? To keep future, to keep the border safe in the future, do you think a border wall should be funded?
No, there's so much wasted resources into going into the border wall, and there's been so many studies and statements indicating that it wouldn't stop the influx either. There's so many, the misconception is that people are getting into this country illegally. The reality is that they're getting in here legally. It's the processing of the whole thing is what changes their status for harder immigration policy that goes in that way. And so it's not the fact that people are leaping over this wall and building a taller wall is going to change anything. It's the indication that the policies in place or what's the problem, and that's how we end up with so much illegal immigration.
I understand when you said you're moderate, you have some right-leaning views, and not saying that Democrats aren't Second Amendment, support the Second Amendment. That'd be a false statement, because I know a lot of Democrats that are responsible gun owners. But you do have a concealed carry permit, which makes you a little bit different from some of your opponents. I went to Roanoke a few weeks back, and I went to a Second Amendment rally. And I'd like to show you that package, get some of your thoughts on the package, and then some of your thoughts on the Second Amendment. Is that cool with you?
That's fine with me.
While hundreds of thousands of marchers descended on the nation's capital, demanding gun reform legislation and gun control, a crowd of Second Amendment supporters gathered in Roanoke, Virginia, in front of the Doomsday Tactical Supply Store to show their support for the Second Amendment. The number of attendees at the event, that was held from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., exceeded well over 100 people. The highlight of the day was a speaking engagement by U.S. Senate hopeful Corey Stewart.
For 3. Every mass shooting in America since 1950, except for 3, has occurred in a gun-free zone. A gun-free zone is not a gun-free zone. A gun-free zone means that law-abiding citizens don't have guns. But that doesn't stop the criminals from having guns, does it? No. Why is it that we protect our money with guns and we protect our kids with signs? Why is it that the left, every time there's a shooting, they make this emotional appeal to Americans, especially to young Americans with impressionable minds? Everybody's heart breaks when there's a shooting in our schools. Everybody. And they're trying to portray like we don't care. The fact is, the left doesn't care.
Exactly.
They're exploiting these tragedies. They're exploiting these families. They're exploiting the deaths of these young people to try to push their left-wing, gun-grabbing ideology to try to disarm Americans, law-abiding Americans. And we're here to say today, we're not going to tolerate it, and we're going to fight back.
Stewart has made his name in Virginia statewide politics by defending the Second Amendment and being a vocal critic of illegal immigration. Stewart's speech today highlighted his support for the Second Amendment.
And in my county, Prince William County is the second largest locality in the state. I've been governing it. It's way up there in occupied territory.
Yes.
It's 465,000 residents. They voted for Hillary Clinton by 21 points. Only one Republican's been able to win it, and that's me. Not once, not twice, but 4 times. You know why? Because I get things done. A couple years ago, I don't think it's right. By the way, who doesn't think it's right that you should have to pay to exercise your Second Amendment rights? That isn't right, is it? So I led and became the first locality in the state to eliminate the concealed carry permit fee in Prince William County. That's what we got to do all over Virginia. We got to do that all over Virginia.
Bill Miller is the president of the Virginia Task Force 3% Dixie Defenders.
Protect our rights, and today our Second Amendment rights. If they take away our rights to own firearms, we're going to be sitting ducks because criminals don't obey any laws. No matter what law you put into effect, criminals are always going to do what they want to do. Even if you were to ban and take all firearms away, you're not going to get them all away. Criminals are still going to be able to get them. You can go out to any corner and buy a firearm in any city for $20, $30, whatever. Might be a little cheaper than what they are, but Second Amendment rights today, protection of our rights, because if they get our Second Amendment rights, the right to defend yourself, the right to survival, you're going to go on something else. The next step, they could be taking your religion away, telling you what you got to believe in. Or they could take your right to peaceful and quiet enjoyment in your own home, or tell you what kind of food you got to eat. I mean, anything. You know, so if we don't stand for this right, we're going to lose more rights, because once they get the notion at their head that they can take our rights away from us, it's going to be a non-stop thing.
While interacting with these Second Amendment rally goers,
M&P, AR-15.
Inside,
M&P 40.
You?
Anderson AR-15 and a Walther PPX 40.
How about you, sir?
AR pistol, 1911.
I got to know a little bit about this guy, Robert Sinclair III. Sinclair III is a former felon who turned it all around.
I used to be one of the worst criminals walking the streets of Roanoke. I mean, I was a 153-pound drug addict. You know, Don Caldwell and Betty Jo Anthony, both of them put me away. One gave me a chance, and then 32 days later, I walked in an undercover sting operation and went in front, and the other one put me away. And I went away for 4 years and 10 months. But the difference for me was, I woke up one day in a 6x8 isolation cell in a maximum security prison in Augusta County, and I just said I had enough. Look, people change. And for me, it was accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior. That's what changed me. That might not be the thing for you, but I'm telling you, that's what worked for me.
Sinclair III told me what business used to be at the location where Doomsday Tactical Supply is now located.
This club called the Monster Bar. There was some bad activity going on here. You know, just underage people coming in, and activities of fighting, and you know, and a couple gunfire, you know, and then finally it erupted one night when 11 people were shot and 1 was killed. And they shut the place down. And as you can see now, this place is a gun store, and nobody's getting killed here now.
I was given exclusive access to the inside of Doomsday Tactical Supply. They had a wide array and variety of guns for sale, from handguns starting at a few $100 to this big guy right here that was priced close to $3,000. The store also had gun cleaning kits, bulletproof vests, which I priced, ammunition, and even coffee that is manufactured and packaged by the Black Rifle Coffee Company, which is a veteran-owned company that exclusively hires U.S. military veterans. The owner of the store, Mark Williams, was busy throughout the day, and I didn't get a chance to interview him on camera, but he did tell me business as well, and that last week he sold over 100 guns at a gun show, and he sells 5 to 10 guns a week in his store. Robert Kilpatrick is the vice president of the Virginia Task Force 3% Dixie Defenders.
Corey Stewart being here today was actually kind of a trip. I didn't expect him to be here. And when he showed up, I was one of the first ones to shake his hand. So having him here kind of reinforces my view that we need to actually defend the kids with the weapons being used against them. You can't expect a gun-free zone to be a gun-free zone when you got a bad guy looking to kill people. The only way to meet violence is to shoot back.
The man of the hour, Corey Stewart, had this to say.
You know, when I started in politics, I was a nice guy.
How long did that last?
Not long. But I've been brutalized. I've been brutalized by Democrats and liberals, and I've stood up to them, and that's how I win elections in Northern Virginia, and that's how we're going to win this November, and we're going to send Tim Kaine packing and retire Tim Kaine. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Stewart is no stranger to controversy, so when he said this during his speech...
Favorite firearm, AR-15.
Ah, there you go.
You know, we gave one away. That caused a little controversy. We gave one away. We might just do that again, I think. I think we're thinking about doing that again.
I had to ask him about it when I interviewed him.
The AR-15 raffle again.
Yeah.
This campaign, is that something you're really considering doing?
Yeah, it is. The only problem is, you know, there's all these organizations now online that will no longer, you know, help you out with the raffle of a firearm anymore. So we're trying to work through those kinks.
But the AR-15 this time, or?
We're thinking about an AR-15 or maybe another rifle.
The event was peaceful, and from my observation, it was a success for the organizers. No violence, no disputes, and no protesters, which leads one to wonder. On less than 2 acres of land, and 99% of the people there being heavily armed, and no injuries, or even anything as much as an argument, are guns really the problem?
And the left wants to sit there and say, oh no, we got to take away the guns, we got to protect the kids. Well, you have to look at the whole picture. You can't just blame an inanimate object. Because really, if I was to take my gun out right now and set it on the ground and say, go kill somebody, it wouldn't do anything.
In Roanoke, Theo Whitelow for Breaking Through.
You got to see the package. It was pretty interesting going down there and meeting with these guys. So what did you think of what you saw in that package?
I mean, so there are a few valid points and some extreme points, and I think that's what we're really evaluating here when it comes to gun violence and the security of our schools, which the argument is grayed between those two. I've spoken to both sides and I've taken in both opinions, and the statement that's consistent is that we all agree that there's something that needs to be done to protect our schools. Arming teachers, I would argue, is not that solution, unless a teacher wants to be. You know, if a teacher, the argument is indicating that I do have my concealed, I'm a responsible gun owner, and I want to be able to protect my students, a valid argument could be made that if you feel and you want that task, that's something that you should be able to do, but to push that on teachers is not the right method to go towards. And I would argue that I would not be putting that as, you know, arming teachers as the method to fix these problems. Going to different meetings, different public appearances and forums and such, there is a difference in the attitudes on what to do. We've made statements
Now these organizations and people that want to defend their Second Amendment rights, they keep on indicating that they just want to take away our guns, and it's not about it. It's about Second Amendment rights and all of these statements. And I have seen that we have made arguments about making our schools safer and what we can do on gun regulations to get guns away from our schools. And at the end, a person stands up and goes, "I wasn't talking about making our schools safer. I was talking about guns." And so that kind of gives an indication too, is like, what is your motive? You know, we want to make schools safer. We want to protect responsible gun ownership, make sure that we have responsible gun owners. In the meantime, not take away the rights of that ability, but protect our schools. That's what the argument was about. That's what it started with, is why are these reaching our schools? I've always made the statement that we need better regulations. So I advocated, even before Dick's Sporting Goods changed the regulations and said that they wanted to sell to 21, I was pushing that even at the Shenandoah Page County meeting, saying that statement and saying that we need special licenses for those type of weapons. That is a way to reduce how many weapons are out there and not denying access to those weapons, but saying you need to meet qualifications. An analogy I've been using is just that you can go get a moped at age 16 and it's not a license, just needing an ID. But if you want to go get a motorcycle, it requires special licenses to do that. You are not preventing people from obtaining those, but you are making it harder to obtain those. And there's been many license analogies, insurance analogies, and all. But I've had heard the argument that going back to what truly is your Second Amendment right, and there are people out there that go, you should only have a pistol with 3 shots and a musket. That's what the Second Amendment right argues. And then there's other people that get, no, it's just whatever the weapon was, that is the right to access that weapon. Back in the day, and then the argument on militias, and that's a big, broad argument. And I've been back and forth to that, and I said, when the Second Amendment right was drawn, you had both the militia and the military. They both were separate entities using the same weapons. They did. And if they wanted to solely express military, they would have said only for the military. So that, that's an argument, it's a valid argument that I've been hearing, but my stance is that yes, we need to protect Second Amendment rights, but we all agree that we need to have better regulations in making it harder to obtain these weapons that have high fire rates and don't meet, that are not the same type of weapon as just pulling out a pistol.
So there's a lot of other people in this race. So on the Republican side, I think there's eight candidates. On the Democrat side, there's you and 3 others. Now I understand you went to the Commonwealth Attorney's office, and where was it at?
Lynchburg.
In Lynchburg, and you made a complaint. Can you tell me what that was?
Well, so I didn't physically go. What had happened is that there was concerns in a couple articles that had came out about the submission process for ballot access. And a few questions were raised on if there was favoritism, if illegal activity happened for that being submitted. And after asking back and forth and going and reaching out to other people that were concerned, actually going to a couple committee meetings that are up in there, there was still that concern. So I had spoken to the Department of Elections and asked them, I said, so if there is a concern that illegal activity had happened, what is supposed to be done and who is supposed to be contacted? And they indicated that you would have to speak to the Commonwealth Attorney of Lynchburg to do that. So I addressed the DPVA first, asking them if they believe that it's a concern or something that the Democratic Party of Virginia should address, or if it's something that they expect candidates or someone else to go and address. And they responded back saying that it's left on the campaigns. So I reached out to to the Commonwealth attorney and asked, I said, has anybody addressed this? It is a concern that's been going around. And she said, well, you would have to file an official statement indicating that there's concerns that election laws might have been broken. And so that's what I did. I sent an official email indicating that this is what I've heard. There's concerns that the testimonies of the other campaign is not lining up, and that the election law, which the one is willful neglect and corrupt conduct, is the one that is being looked at as being broken for the fact that there was an attempt to get my opponent's name first on the ballot.
Who do you think the responsible parties are for the willful neglect and corrupt conduct?
Well, that would be the head chair and the candidate, Peter Volosin, because they were the ones that were involved in going off and attempting to process, his petition and paperwork ahead of time to have a different timestamp, knowing that the other candidates are inside where they were told to be at 12 o'clock.
Has anything come of this yet, or is there a time frame that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office said that their investigation will take?
So I had reached out to the Commonwealth Attorney again, and she said this is a serious matter, and so they have to investigate, and so she can't really give a time frame, which is understandable. I mean, the fact that it's state election laws would indicate that it is a big deal. And so, there are people that are indicating, oh, it's no big deal that he tried to cheat. You're making a bigger issue of this. But that's not the indication that I received. And this is a big example that we would like to know what these answers are. Like, what happens when these election laws are broken? How important are these laws? So that's, while those are saying that it's not a big deal, these are the answers I'd like to know. There was arguments indicating that maybe the petitions were submitted prior to the deadline, or to the deadline of when you're able, not deadline, I guess the opening of being able to submit. Questions on what happens prior, and if there's an argument, and there's been arguments saying that it would have had to been submitted prior to be accepted to have a 12 o'clock timestamp.
So there's questions as to whether people were submitting them before you were allowed to legally submit.
Right.
Okay.
And the question comes out to be like, what should happen if that happens? And I've heard multiple different statements. There's not really a clear answer. Some argue that it's just fine, you just count it for 12 o'clock. Others argued and said, well, no, that would void the petitions. Well, if that voids all of the petitions that you're able to submit, it would make sense for the candidate to say, oh, I'll gladly file on that Friday because I would rather be on third place on the ballot than I would not be on the ballot at all because I tried to cheat the system.
You think the 6th District Committee was involved at all in any way?
I'm not certain.
Okay. And it's interesting because I've been covering the Republican race too, and there were several candidates in that race, I think Ed Justo and the Haywood campaign, that said that they believe that the Dunbar campaign was given access to they're holding a convention, was given access to the delegates list before they were. And they claimed that they had some proof of that, that they weren't looked into. But it's interesting stuff. I mean, these campaigns with this many candidates, it can get very confusing and it can get pretty ugly. So far, you guys have kept it pretty clean on the Democrat side.
Well, there's been some incidents. I would argue that that's not entirely true. This is the first thing that has came to light. I've ran into many obstacles from my opponent just from the get-go. Beforehand, there was rumors indicating that I was against gay people, which is terrible. And on my policy page, I've always indicated that I've been for marriage equality. And so I've addressed it with the head chair, saying like, I don't know why this is going out, but it's not true, and I'm disappointed that has came out. And so that initially was dropped, but then immediately a libel article came out skewing my policy page, indicating that I'm not a Democrat, and essentially saying that I'm working for the Republicans. And I find out later from other sources indicating that that published piece, the editor has networks with the Volosin campaign. And then later on, I've been seeing tons of evidence indicating that his campaign methods have been going around and saying that I am not a Democrat because of a couple conservative stances. And that has seemed to have been the goal of his campaign, is to go around and spread the message that I'm not Democrat at all, not even the fact of indicating that, and totally ignoring the fact of my Democratic policies that I have. So that has happened. There's been favoritism through certain committees and things that I've had obstacles in being blocked out from attending. That has happened. And it's really unfortunate. But this is the first incident that has happened and been directed not just towards me, but towards the other campaigns. And that's why this one got exposure. And so I think that is something important to know, because it's not like it is the first time. It's just the first time that it's been addressed. And it is an important deal. And I'm disappointed in people that are complicit. And that's what's happening, is either you want to address it and go, nothing wrong was done, but we investigated it and nothing wrong was done. Or we don't want to stand by corruption. We want this addressed because we want fairness. And that's what we stand for.
Okay. So here we are. You guys have to go up against the Republican. First, you have to win the nomination for the Democrats. And then you'll face your Republican opponents. And I'm pretty sure you're paying attention to them, but there's so many of them that you're not really sure. There seems to be some people out in front, but we're not going to talk about that. You, obviously, you've told me why you're a little bit different than your opponent, Volosin, that you think you're different from. But, what about the other opponents on the Democrat side? What makes you think that you can win this race against the Republican nominee?
There's a lot of indications that Jennifer Lewis as a candidate is a further left candidate, and that's very hard in this district. Being able to pull even the moderate votes, being a further left candidate, that is a struggle that she will have. And she's indicating that she works with both Democrats and Republicans, so I'm not sure if she's trying to fit the moderate role or if she's still defining her campaign. I'll be interested to see where she goes with that. But looking at both Volosin and Lewis directly, well, Lewis has a hard campaign being further left, and Volosin just has a hard issue coming up that I would say with just integrity, is what I'm finding with just throughout the whole campaign process, and it's what I have issues with.
Okay, and just to have a little bit of fun before we end this segment, anytime that anybody's a politician or about to be a politician and I get them alone in a room, I have to ask them what they think about what's going on in the White House. Every day it's something new. We have the Daniels thing. We have the Mueller investigation. What are your thoughts when you look at this? Because in my lifetime, and people can say whatever they want. There was a scandal here with Obama. There was a scandal here with Bush. In my lifetime, looking at it from an honest perspective, I've never seen nothing like this coming from a White House, from an administration, firings every week. He's doing his third national security advisor. It's insane, and it's chaos and every single day. And they blame it on his camp blames it on fake news media and left media. What are your thoughts when you see this kind of stuff and knowing that you want to go up here into Washington and make a change?
Well, look at the incidents that we were dealing with. You're talking about national politics all the way down to what we're dealing with on even local politics and even the city council, talking about addressing corruption. I think that's what it is. People lack faith in the political system and in the government because the things we keep on arguing with is transparency and fighting corruption. And so when you have candidates that truly stand up and say, I'm addressing these issues, and it's not about calling someone out. It's about doing what's right. And if you find that there's corruption, and if you find that these situations are happening, even to the national level, that's what people are supposed to stand up and do. That's why you have investigations, because investigations indicate you did something wrong, you didn't do something wrong, and you're held accountable for the actions that you did. And so that's the same scale. Like, we're looking at it at all levels, and that's what I say. Transparency, be honest. If you don't want to be called out for being corrupt, don't be corrupt.
All right, man, I want to thank you for coming on our show, and it was really nice to talk to you today. To our viewers, thank you for joining us. Please tune in again for our next special episode of Breaking Through, and keep watching our reports on Facebook and YouTube channels. Thank you very much.